At 7 on Monday morning, I unlocked the Cedar Glen pottery studio and found 12 labeled shelves empty. On my phone, my daughter Claire had already told 12 adult makers, "Mom changed the firing." I stood between the shelves and that sentence. By Saturday, 12 adults expected to show work they had spent 6 weeks making. Had I forgotten a promise? Or had my name been placed over somebody else's choice? I did not answer the group message. I stopped the next ordinary cycle before it began, took one picture of the scheduling board as it stood, and called Lena Ortiz, whose tall vase should have been on the second shelf. "Helen," she said, "Claire told us not to worry. She said you had already agreed to replace anything that went wrong." "When did she tell you that?" "Saturday afternoon." No one could have inspected those pieces on Saturday afternoon. They were supposed to remain on their labeled boards in the covered holding shelves until Monday. I walked into the drawing room while Lena stayed on the line. All 12 works were on the open rack by the back window. 4 simple forms, including Lena's vase, had dried intact. 5 joined pieces showed visible cracks where one part met another. 3 thin, asymmetrical forms had pulled out of the shapes their makers had left. Then I read the card hanging beside the occupied kiln. It did not carry any of the 12 names on the board. It said, "Claire Mercer, rush order." "Lena," I said, "your vase is still here. It is whole. It missed the space that was reserved for it." She was quiet for a moment. "Then why did Claire say you were replacing it?" That was the first question I could answer honestly. "I don't know yet." Claire came through the front door 20 minutes later with 2 coffees and the brisk smile she used when she hoped speed would pass for confidence. She was 38 then. She had been helping at the cooperative for 4 years, first beside me and later on her own shifts. That month she held the rotating scheduling duty. She looked at my untouched coffee, then at the open rack. "You called them already." I called Lena. "I asked you not to create panic. You told them I changed the firing." She put the cups down. "I told them what would keep everyone calm until we fixed it." I pointed toward the rush order card. "What is in there?" "A set for a new client. No money has changed hands. It could become regular business for the studio." "And the 12 works?" Her eyes moved toward the drawing room. "I needed the holding space while I loaded. I moved them Saturday. I thought they would be fine for 2 days. 4 remained intact, but had lost their promised time. 5 were cracked. 3 no longer held the forms their makers had chosen." Claire lowered her voice. "We can remake the affected ones tonight. You know their pieces. You taught the class." 8 pieces. 8. Fine, we can do 8. Whose hands would those 8 pieces pretend to come from?" She crossed her arms. "They don't need a lesson in philosophy, Mom. They need work for Saturday." I looked again at the 4 intact originals. "And why did you tell those 4 people their work needed replacing?" For the first time that morning, she had no fast answer. "Before my husband David died, he used to say Claire and I could make a simple disagreement sound like 2 people trying to carry the same table through different doors. I would tell him that was because Claire pushed before asking where the door was. Claire would tell him I stopped to measure a doorway everybody else could see. David had been gone 6 years. Without him, the 2 of us had become very good at finishing practical conversations before either one reached the painful part. Claire could run a room. She remembered who needed a lower table, who preferred morning access, and which member always forgot to write a name on a board. She also believed that being useful should make people trust her judgment after she stopped explaining it. I had helped create that belief. Her first month at Cedar Glen, a member named Ruth arrived for an evening session and found that her reservation had been written on the wrong week. Claire called her, stayed late, and opened the room anyway. Ruth later told me, "Your daughter makes a problem feel temporary." I repeated that compliment to Claire. What I did not say was that making a problem temporary and making it disappear were different skills. Claire became the person who found an open corner, one extra hour, one member willing to trade. Most of the time, those trades helped people. They also taught her that a blank square was hers if she could fill it quickly enough. When the cooperative gave her the scheduling rotation, she brought the binder to my apartment like a diploma. "Now they'll have to come to me," she said. I heard pride and answered with pride. I did not ask why being needed felt safer to her than being known. When her apartment lease became difficult, I sat beside her until every form was filled out properly. When her marriage ended, I answered before the second ring. When she began volunteering at Cedar Glen, I quietly corrected scheduling mistakes before other members saw them. I called that support. She may have learned to call it a guarantee, but 12 adults had left work in our care. Whatever Claire and I had taught each other, those makers did not owe us the use of their names. I asked Lena to meet me in the adult education room at 10. Then I sent one message to the group. "Your work is still at the studio. Please do not accept a replacement until you have seen your own piece and chosen what you want. I will be available at 10. Claire and I will answer for the schedule separately." Claire read it over my shoulder. "Separately," she said. "Yes. So you've decided I'm the villain. I've decided I won't be your explanation." At 10, 9 of the 12 makers arrived. The remaining 3 joined by phone or came later that afternoon. They ranged in age from 24 to 71. No one needed me to speak for the whole room. Before anyone touched a piece, I explained only what they needed for the next choice. The work had been moved Saturday and left on the open rack. It had not entered the firing reserved for it. The visible condition in front of each person, not my opinion of its value, would determine what options made sense. Marcus asked who had moved it. "Claire did," I said. That was the first time I used her name in the room. Lena asked why. "Her rush order took the Monday block. She should answer the rest." I felt Claire watching from the doorway. Naming the act without describing her character was harder than anger would have been. Anger would have let me finish the sentence for her. Lena went first because I had called her first. She lifted her vase from the rack and turned it slowly. Its narrow neck was straight. The carved leaves near its base were exactly where she had placed them. "This is not ruined," she said. "No," I told her. "It is dry and intact. It missed Monday's block. The ordinary makeup block is after the showcase." Her mouth tightened. The vase had been for her first juried community display. Waiting meant the place card would stand without the finished piece. Can it be rushed into something else? There may be an emergency block before Saturday, but using it requires an honest reason on the board. I won't promise that space until the conflict is named. She rested both hands on the edge of her wearboard. "Then I want this one later. I don't want another vase that only looks like mine from across the room." 3 other makers with intact pieces chose the same thing. They were disappointed, not destroyed. That difference mattered. Marcus Bell carried over the picture he had built for his brother's retirement. A line had opened where the handle joined the body. It was not hidden. It did not need an expert to see. "Can you close it?" he asked. "You can choose to rework it before it goes into a later block. I can guide you. I won't do it under your name." He touched the crack with one finger and pulled his hand away. "Will it look the way it did?" "No." That answer cost him something. I could see it. Marcus had started the class saying he wanted to make one perfect, useful object. Every week, he had sanded his expectations smoother than the clay. Now his choice was not between perfect and broken. It was between an altered original he could still claim and a copy somebody else made to protect a deadline. "Show me what I can do myself," he said. 4 other makers had visible cracks at joined places. One decided almost immediately to rework her piece. 2 wanted an hour before choosing. The fifth, a quiet accountant named Dev, asked if he could take his work home and return with an answer. We wrapped nothing in mystery. We wrote each choice beneath the person's name. One of the two undecided makers was Camille Price, who had built a wide bowl with two small handles. She had planned to give it to her sister after a year of not speaking. "If I rework it," she said, "the handles may not match." That may be true. If I start over, Saturday is gone anyway. That is also true. She glanced toward Claire. "Is there any choice where I get back the week I had?" "No." Camille looked down at the bowl. "Then give me the hour." There are moments when competence means producing an answer. That morning it meant refusing to decorate the absence of one. Joe Whitaker's three-part sculpture had changed most. It had been a set of narrow figures leaning toward one another. On the open rack, the tallest had pulled away, and the smallest no longer stood as she had shaped it. Joe stared at it for a long time. Claire had entered the room by then. She stayed near the doorway. "I can copy that one," she said. "I saw your sketches." Joe did not look at her. "You saw the sketch," she said. "You didn't make the decision I made after the sketch." Claire flushed. I asked Joe what she wanted. "I want to keep this," she said, pointing to the distorted work. "And I want to start again." "You don't have to prove anything by starting again," I told her. "I know. I'm not starting because this one is worthless. I'm starting because it isn't where I meant to stop." The other two makers with distorted forms made the same choice for different reasons. One wanted to simplify. The other wanted to repeat the original process and see which decisions changed. Their new pieces would not be ready for any Saturday firing. That fact remained true even after everybody had calmed down. The maker who wanted to simplify was Warren, a retired mechanic building a long wall piece made of narrow, overlapping sections. He separated the sections that still held their lines and placed the rest beside them. "I kept adding because I thought a showcase piece had to be big," he said. "Maybe I needed somebody to tell me to stop." "Claire moving it did not become permission," I said. "I know, I'm giving myself permission now." The third restart belonged to Nia, who had formed a shallow boat shape with one raised end. She asked if she could photograph the distorted original from above before beginning again. "You can keep the original," I said. "I don't want to keep it forever. I want to remember where it changed." The word restart covered three different choices. Joe wanted to reclaim intention. Warren wanted less. Nia wanted a record before letting go. By noon, the 12 works had 3 clear futures. 4 intact originals would wait. 5 makers would rework their cracked originals if they chose to. 3 makers would begin again and keep the distorted predecessors with their names. Claire waited until the last member left. "You made it sound final." "Their choices are final unless they change them." "I mean about me. You moved the work, you used their block, you put my name on the decision. Because I knew you could fix it." "That is not an answer. It is the truth." She said it like the truth should earn credit simply for arriving late. That evening she came to my apartment. I knew she was angry because she knocked. She still had the spare key I had given her after David died, and for 6 years she had used it without ceremony. I opened the door but did not move aside at once. "Can I come in?" It was a small question. It should not have felt new. I stepped back. She sat at my kitchen counter, though neither of us made food. The 2 coffees from morning might as well have belonged to another week. "The client is coming Saturday," she said. "The first block is done. The pieces still need the finishing block, and I told her they would be ready." "Did you reserve that block?" "I was going to. Under what name?" She looked away. At Cedar Glen, personal member work and outside commercial work could both be scheduled, but commercial use had to be named because it could not displace member commitments. It was a simple, cooperative practice, not a courtroom rule. The person holding the marker still had to tell the truth. "If you put the 8 replacements together tonight," Claire said, "I can use the emergency opening for them, and I'll move my finishing work to Friday. The 8 makers did not ask for replacements. They want something on Saturday. 4 want their originals, 5 want to work on their own cracks, 3 want to restart. That adds up to 12. Some groups overlap in your sentence. They do not overlap in the room. She pressed both palms to the counter. You always do this. You make everything so careful that there is no room left for somebody to recover from one bad decision. I wanted to tell her how many bad decisions I had quietly made room for. I wanted to list them by year. Lists can be another form of shouting, and I had no wish to turn our history into ammunition. Instead, I said, I am making room for you to tell the truth. I am not making 8 objects to hide it. Then the client walks. Maybe. And everybody here decides I am only your assistant who got above herself. There it was. Not the money, not even the order. Claire had spent 4 years believing every compliment carried an invisible second sentence. She learned it from her mother. She wanted one visible success that did not come through me. I understood that hunger. I also understood that she had fed it with 12 other people's time. I don't think you are only my assistant, I said. They do. Then put your own name on what you chose. Her face hardened. Easy for you. Your name is already on everything. She took my spare key from her ring and placed it on the counter. There, she said. Now you don't have to worry that I'll use the wrong door. She left before I could decide whether the key was an accusation or a boundary. I did not chase her down the hall. The next morning I met May Hollis in the studio common room. May was a retired mail carrier with a direct way of speaking that made every sentence sound properly addressed. She would take the scheduling rotation after Claire. I told her we had 9 possible originals for a makeup firing, 4 intact and 5 still being reworked. The 3 restarts would need more time. May uncapped the board marker. There is an emergency opening Thursday night, she said. If this is a declared scheduling conflict, it can go there. Through the open doorway, I could see Claire trimming the edge of one rush piece. She did not look up. The conflict is not mine to declare for her, I said. May held out the marker. For 30 years, I had been the person who filled blank spaces. Lesson plans, pickup gaps, the last 2 seats in a workshop, the silence after my daughter said she was fine. I left the Thursday square blank. May nodded once. Then I can hold the ordinary makeup block after Saturday under the 12 existing names. It will carry 9 if the reworked pieces are ready. Saturday was gone for them. Their later access was not. That difference did not feel generous. It felt exact. In the parking lot, Claire caught up with me. May told me you refused Thursday. I refused to name your commercial conflict as member work. You could have written recovery. Recovery from what? She stopped. I waited. A scheduling mistake, she said at last. Whose? You know whose. The board needs to know whose. Her eyes filled, and for one reckless second I nearly apologized for making her feel cornered. Then I remembered 12 wearboards on an open rack. If I write it, she said, everyone will know I am not ready to lead anything. Several makers told me they would work with you again if you told them plainly what happened. Because you asked them? I did not ask them to forgive you. You didn't have to. She walked to her car, then turned back. You will fix it, because you always do. That sentence hurt more than the accusation in the group message. The accusation had been false. This was a description of the bargain I had helped build. Wednesday evening, Lena, Marcus, and Joe joined me in the workroom. The others came in shifts. Nobody made speeches. We had choices to carry out. The 4 intact pieces stayed on their boards. I checked their name cards and left them alone. Marcus sat with his picture in front of him. If you do the join, he said, will anybody know? You will. That wasn't the answer I wanted. I know, he gave a short laugh. You teachers keep the unpleasant answers in your apron pockets. Only the small ones. I showed him enough to make his own next decision, then moved away. He reworked the cracked area slowly. It remained visible, though not in the same way. The picture no longer looked untouched. It looked attended to. Across the room, Joe placed her distorted 3 figures on a clean board and wrote "First Form" on the card. Beside it, she set down new clay. Claire entered near the end of the session. She carried a box of 8 small forms. "Samples," she said before anyone could ask. They resembled the missing work only in size. Lena's carved leaves were absent. Marcus's handle had become a plain curve. Joe's figures were reduced to 3 smooth columns. Claire set the box on the center table. "These can be finished in time," she said. Nobody moved toward them. Dev, who had chosen to rework his own cracked bowl, spoke first. "They are good pieces," he said. "They are not mine." Claire looked at me as if I had rehearsed him. "I told you," I said quietly, "they would choose." "You gave them choices designed to reject me," Joe turned from her new work. "No, you gave us one choice designed to erase us." The room went still. I did not rescue Claire from that sentence. I also did not add to it. She carried the sample box back to her table. When she left, she forgot it. The next morning, I placed it in her locker with no note. By Friday afternoon, the 5 makers who had chosen reworking had finished what they could do before the later block. Marcus's pitcher still carried a line near the handle. Dev's bowl had a small change in its rim. The others were similarly altered, not disguised. The 4 intact originals remained exactly as we had found them on Monday. Joe and the other 2 restart makers had begun new forms. They were nowhere near ready. Their distorted predecessors sat beside them, labeled and owned. We had 9 originals ready for the makeup block after the showcase and 3 new starts in progress. No arithmetic could turn that into 12 finished pieces for Saturday. The makers decided to use their showcase table differently. Lena brought a handwritten card that said "Delayed Original." Marcus wrote "Reworked by Maker." Joe placed her first form beside a photograph of her hands beginning again and wrote "Restart in Progress." The other 9 used the same 3 descriptions. May found 3 desk lamps so the empty spaces would not look abandoned. Dev suggested placing each name card at the front edge, even when the original was still waiting for the later block. Camille chose to leave her card unadorned. "I don't want a photograph of what it was supposed to be," she said. "The empty space is accurate." Claire was in the next room while they decided. She could hear us. Twice I saw her come as far as the doorway, then turn back. I almost went to her. My body knew the route from another room to wherever Claire was struggling. I stayed beside the table and asked Marcus whether his card used the words he wanted. It did. There was no accusation on the table. Claire's name appeared nowhere, neither did mine. Saturday morning, Claire's prospective client arrived at the studio expecting confirmation that her rush set would be ready that afternoon. The first firing had been completed in the block Claire took, but the pieces still needed the later finishing block she had never honestly reserved. The client was an adult woman named Paula who owned a small gift shop across town. She was not a villain, a savior, or a judge. She had simply been promised a date. Claire met her near the entrance. I was across the room arranging nothing because the makers had arranged their own table. "I can finish them next week," Claire said. "You told me Saturday," Paula replied. "There was a family scheduling problem." "Is there a block today?" Claire looked toward the board. The Thursday emergency square remained blank. The ordinary makeup block carried 12 member names. "Not today." Paula closed the empty box she had brought. "Then I need to use the other supplier." We did not exchange money, so let's leave it there. That was all. No lawsuit, no dramatic demand. One ordinary opportunity ended because the promise beneath it had not been real. Claire watched Paula walk out. Then she came to me. You could have lied for one more day. About which block? Any of it. To her or to them? She looked at the 12-person table. Visitors were reading the cards. Lena stood beside her empty place without hiding it. Marcus answered a question about why he had chosen to keep a visible change. Joe showed someone the distance between her first form and the new beginning. Nobody was chanting for justice. Nobody was watching Claire. That seemed to hurt her almost as much as blame would have. "You made me unnecessary," she said. "No," I told her. "I stopped making everybody else unnecessary." She flinched, and I regretted the neatness of the sentence as soon as it left me. Pain can make a person sound wiser than she is. I was not wise in that moment. I was tired. Claire left before noon. The showcase continued. Lena's empty place drew questions, but her answers were about waiting for the original, not about my daughter. Marcus did not call his picture repaired, he called it still his. Joe did not ask anyone to admire her courage, she kept working. Camille's sister arrived near 3. She stood before the empty place and read the name card. "Where is the bowl?" she asked. Camille told her, "Not ready, still mine." Her sister nodded, then stood beside her for several minutes. I did not know what had happened between them, and our story did not need to borrow their reconciliation. The only fact that belonged to us was that Camille had not accepted a counterfeit gift to make the meeting easier. Near closing, Warren removed 2 sections from his restart and put them back in the clay bin. He caught me watching. "Still smaller," he said. "Still yours," I answered. At closing, I found Claire's scheduling binder beneath the front desk. On top was a note for May. "I need another week before I can explain." It was signed. That was not enough to solve anything. It was the first sentence she had put under her own name. The 9 recovered originals went into the ordinary makeup block the following week. 4 were the intact pieces that had simply lost Monday. 5 were the originals their makers had reworked with their own hands. The 3 restarts remained on the work table beside the distorted predecessors. Before the unloading, I called Claire. "The 9 pieces come out Thursday at 6, I said. "The 3 restarts will be on the table. May will be there, and the affected makers are invited. If you come, I need you to hear them and answer one question. Why did the block move?" Do I have to apologize in front of everyone? No. Do I have to agree with whatever they say? No. Then what is this? A chance to put your name on your choice. She was silent. "And if I don't come?" "May still has to decide who schedules next. I am not asking for that role." "You could take it back." "I don't want it." That answer surprised her. For years, Claire had treated authority as a chair that could belong to only one of us. I had sometimes treated it that way too. But I did not want her chair. I wanted the makers' names to stay attached to their work. 6 o'clock, she said. She did not promise. Thursday evening, May arranged the 9 name cards on the unloading shelves. On the long work table, Joe and the other 2 restart makers placed their distorted predecessors beside their new forms. The new work was still unfinished. At 6, Claire's chair was empty. At 6:03, its legs scraped the floor. She sat down without removing her coat. May kept the door closed. Only the directly affected adults were there. No visitors, no prospective client, no audience waiting for a scene. We began unloading. Lena received the first of the 4 intact delayed originals. She ran a thumb near the carved leaves, careful not to turn relief into performance. "This is the one I wanted," she said. "I lost Saturday. I did not lose the work." Claire stared at the vase. Marcus received one of the 5 reworked originals. The line at the handle remained visible. "I wanted Helen to hide this for me," he said. "She wouldn't. I was angry for about 10 minutes. A few people smiled. "Then I did it myself. I still don't love the line. I do love that I know whose decision it was." Claire took off her coat. Jo stood beside her unfinished restart. Her distorted first form remained on its labeled board. "Mine wasn't in this load," she said. "I decided not to accept the shape it dried into. I also decided not to throw it away. Claire, I don't need you to say it was worthless. I need you to stop saying you saved it." Claire's face changed then, not into remorse all at once. It changed into the expression of someone hearing that the story she had built offered no safe role, not even rescuer. The other makers spoke briefly. We did not go around the room for 12 matching statements. 4 people had waited, 5 had reworked, 3 had restarted. Their reasons were their own. Several said they would share a room with Claire again. One said he needed a month. Another said he did not want her scheduling his work. No one asked for her expulsion. Claire looked at me. "Did you know they would say that?" "No." "You told me they might keep working with me." "They told me that before. They chose what to say tonight." May stood beside the board with the marker in her hand. "Claire," she said, "will you enter the moved Monday block under your own name?" The question was smaller than the room had become. Claire could admit the substitution and remain an ordinary member, or keep calling it a family scheduling mistake, and lose the scheduling duty without having named why. She rubbed her thumb along the edge of the binder on her lap. "I moved the 12 works on Saturday," she said. "I put my rush order into their Monday block. I thought 2 days on the open rack would be harmless. When it wasn't, I told everyone my mother had changed the firing because I believed she would make replacements before anyone saw what I did." No one spoke. Claire looked at Lena, then Marcus, then Jo. "I am sorry the work was moved," she said. "I am sorry you lost the showcase." She stopped. "And I still think I was trying to build something for this studio." It was not a perfect apology. It carried a defense inside it. May did not grade her. "The scheduling rotation moves to me tonight," she said. "You remain a member. Commercial requests go through the same visible calendar as everyone else." Claire nodded once. Her rush client was gone. Her scheduling authority was gone. She still had her locker, her table hours, and the choice to come back without special access. That was the whole consequence. I did not ask for more. Afterward, people collected their work. 9 name cards returned to the shelves with unloaded originals. 3 stayed on the work table beside new pieces not ready to leave. May asked each maker to initial the ordinary calendar beside the work received or still in progress. It took less than 2 minutes. Claire watched Marcus write his name, then Lena, then Jo beside the words "in progress." "This is what you wanted?" Claire asked May. "I want the board to tell the next person what is actually here," May said. There was no accusation in her voice. Claire seemed to find that harder than accusation. Claire waited until the room emptied. "Are you satisfied?" she asked me. "No." She seemed startled. "Then what did you want?" "I wanted you not to move them." There was no victory available inside that answer. That was why it was true. She looked toward Jo's table. "I meant what I said about building something." "I know. You don't believe me. I believe you wanted one thing with only your name on it." Her eyes met mine. "Yes." "Then make one thing that doesn't require somebody else's name to disappear." I said it quietly. Even then it sounded close to a lesson, and she was not one of my students. She picked up her coat. "I don't know how to talk to you when you aren't fixing the next part." "Neither do I yet." That was the most equal sentence we had spoken in years. For the next 6 weeks, I kept 1 monthly teaching session at Cedar Glen and no more. The first Tuesday I stayed home. I sat at my kitchen table at 7 and kept looking toward the door as if someone would arrive with a problem. No one did. I read half a novel and washed 1 cup. At the studio, May kept the calendar visible. Members wrote their own names. Commercial requests occupied clearly marked spaces. None of that was revolutionary. Its value came from continuing after the room stopped paying attention. The 4 intact delayed originals went home with their makers. Marcus returned once to ask about the altered line on his picture. He did not ask me to remove it. He asked whether he could make another picture using what he had learned. "You can," I said. "Will you do the handle if I get nervous?" "No," he laughed. "Worth asking." Joe worked on her restart every Thursday. Some weeks I was not there. On the 6th week, she placed the new 3-part form beside the distorted first one. They were not copies. The new figures leaned differently because she leaned differently while making them. "I'm stopping here," she said. The decision belonged to her. So did both forms. Claire came back to the studio on the 2nd week. She did not teach. She cleaned the shared tables after her own work period and entered her requests under her own name. Once, she wrote a commercial inquiry into a member square. May pointed to it. Claire erased it and moved it without argument. Another time, she asked Dev if he wanted advice on his bowl. He said no. She said, "All right," and walked away. Those moments were small enough to be trusted. The harder test came in week 3, when a member canceled a Saturday block. Claire was alone at the board when the call came. Her old instinct would have been to decide which waiting person deserved it and announce the favor afterward. She sent one message to the 4 names already listed for makeup access. "A Saturday space opened. Reply to May if you want it. I am not assigning it." Lena showed me the message because she wanted to know whether I planned to take the space for my monthly class. I did not. Dev used it. Claire was at the studio that morning and did not tell him she had created the opening. She had not created it. She had passed on accurate information. I noticed the difference. I did not praise her for meeting the ordinary standard she had once bypassed. At coffee later, she mentioned the cancel block herself. "It bothered me not to choose," she said. "What did you do with that?" "I went home." That was an answer I could believe. She did not ask for the spare key back. Our first contact outside the studio came in the 4th week. "Coffee Thursday at 10?" she texted. 40 minutes. No studio decisions. In the past, Claire would have written, "We should talk sometime," which meant I was expected to propose the place, protect the mood, and know when to leave. This message had a day, a time, and a limit. I answered yes. We met at a coffee shop near the bus station. She arrived before me and had not ordered for me. "I almost got you the usual," she said. "Why didn't you?" "I thought I should ask." I ordered tea. For 40 minutes we talked badly but honestly. She said she had spent years believing that every room saw me before it saw her. I told her I had spent years stepping in early because waiting for her to struggle frightened me. "So you didn't trust me," she said. "Sometimes I didn't trust myself to watch." That answer took more from me than any accusation. She asked if I thought she should leave the cooperative. "That is your decision." "Do you want me to?" I considered it. "I want to be able to attend my one session without managing your choices." She nodded. At 38 minutes, she looked at the clock. We said 40. We left at 40. There was no hug in the parking lot. There was also no request for me to soften what had happened. 2 months after the unloading, I opened the studio for my monthly session and found a cracked bowl on the repair shelf. It was Claire's. The crack was visible near the rim. For a moment, my hands moved before my mind did. I reached toward it with the old reflex, the one that had finished assignments, corrected calendars, answered on the first ring, and nearly made 8 false pieces in one long night. Then I saw the card beneath the bowl. Claire Mercer. "Could you show me how to approach this at your next session? If you say no, I will ask May for another teacher." There was no mom written where a name should be, no emergency, no assumption that love had already agreed. Claire came in 10 minutes later and stopped when she saw me beside the shelf. "Did you read it?" "Yes." Do you have room next month? I checked the calendar. I did have room. Second half of the session, I said. You will do the work. I know. She waited. All right, I said. Write your name in the square. She did. I moved another wearboard 6 inches to the left, making space beside her bowl. I did not touch the crack. I did not promise what the bowl would become. At the end of the evening, I turned off the work light and left with my hands empty.